My whole body was shaking uncontrollably, and my knees gave out. Just an hour ago, I was crying with joy over inheriting $100 million from my parents. I had rushed to my husband's office with our young son to surprise him. However, behind his office door, I was the one who overheard a shocking surprise. Unbelievably, my own husband was at the center of it all. My world was small, but it was full. It was small because it revolved solely around the little old walk-up apartment we rented, and it was full because it was filled with the laughter of my young son, Leo. This morning, like hundreds of mornings before, I, Catherine Miller, was feeding Leo the oatmeal I had made myself. My comfortable, everyday t-shirt was a little stretched out from Leo's tugging. The 5-year-old was the center of my universe. He was the reason for all my fatigue and the source of all my happiness. My husband, Rick Sullivan, had left for work early. He always said he was busy working hard for us. I always believed him. I loved him with the last remaining pieces of my heart, which had been worn down by life before I met him. We lived paycheck to paycheck. Rick was a junior manager at a real estate development firm. His salary was enough to cover the rent, utilities, and groceries, but there was hardly any money left to save. I never complained. For me, having my good-hearted Rick and a healthy Leo was more than enough. My parents had passed away a long time ago, and I had been alone until Rick came along and gave me a new family. I was washing the dishes after breakfast when my phone, its screen cracked in several places, rang. It was an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat. Rarely did anyone call me, aside from Rick or the moms from the church group we attended weekly. I wiped my wet hands on my apron and answered, "Hello? Hello, is this Catherine Miller?" The voice on the other end was deep, professional, and unfamiliar. "Yes, this is she. Who's calling?" "Hello, Catherine Miller. I'm attorney Franklin Pierce from the law firm of Pierce & Associates. I am the executor of your late mother's estate." Hearing that, my heart stopped for a moment. My mother. It had been so long since I'd heard her name spoken so formally. My mother? My voice trembled. Has something happened to my mother's? "Catherine Miller, please calm yourself. I know this is sudden. Your late mother left you something that only now, after completing all the complex legal procedures, we can process and deliver. She placed a long-term investment in your name." Mr. Pierce paused, as if giving me time to breathe. "An investment? What investment?" As far as I know, my mother had nothing when she passed. My memory flashed back to her humble funeral years ago. Besides me, there were only a few neighbors. "Everyone thought so, ma'am, but she was very clever. She set aside the bulk of her estate in a protected, top-secret investment, ensuring that only you, her sole heir, could access it after a certain period. And now, that fund has matured." I still didn't get it. "I don't understand, Mr. Pierce. What do you mean?" I heard a patient sigh on the other end. "Catherine Miller, in short, you are the rightful heir to your late mother's investment fund. The net amount that will be deposited into your account after deducting all taxes and administrative costs is $100 million. The plate in my hand slipped and crashed onto the tiled floor, shattering into pieces. $100 million. I hadn't misheard. My ears were ringing, and my legs felt weak. I crumpled onto the cold kitchen floor among the broken shards of the plate. "Mr. Pierce, you're not playing a joke on me, are you?" I whispered. Tears began to well up in my eyes. "This is no joke, Catherine Miller. This is a very serious matter. We have been trying to locate you for months. Your records changed often. Fortunately, we finally found your registered phone number," Mr. Pierce explained. "We need to set up a meeting for you to sign the disbursement paperwork. Ma'am, are you all right?" I couldn't finish the sentence. The tears were now streaming uncontrollably. This wasn't a dream. It was real. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Leo's small voice sounded worried. He ran into the kitchen and saw me sitting on the floor, crying. I immediately wiped my tears away, forcing a smile. "Mommy's okay, sweetie. Mommy is just very, very happy." Even after hanging up, having agreed to meet Mr. Pierce at his office soon, I remained on the floor. My mind was floating. $100 million. I repeated the number to myself softly. a number I never dared to dream of in my wildest fantasies. We could buy a house. A real house, not a rental. A house with a yard for Leo to run in. I could send Leo to the best school. And I could help Rick. Yes, Rick, my husband. Rick's exhausted face every time he came home from work instantly appeared in my mind. His complaints about his superiors, his dream of starting his own business, always stalled by a lack of capital. Now it could all come true. We could fulfill all our dreams. Rick would no longer have to break his back working for someone else. A new wave of euphoria washed over me. I had to tell him right away. I couldn't wait for him to come home tonight. I wanted to see his face when he heard the news. I wanted to share this happiness with him right now. With hands still trembling slightly, I picked up the broken pieces of the plate. Then I gave Leo a bath and dressed him in the nicest clothes. He had a small sky blue polo shirt. I quickly changed myself. I chose my best, modest blouse and skirt, the ones I wore for important meetings, and put on a little perfume. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was flushed with joy. "Mommy, where are we going?" Leo asked, confused by my rush. I knelt and held his small shoulders. "We're going to surprise Daddy, sweetie. A very big surprise. One that's going to change our lives from now on," I said, my voice slightly hoarse from the emotional tears just moments ago. I immediately called for an Uber. My heart pounded as I waited. I imagined Rick's reaction. He would surely be stunned. He would hug me. Maybe he would even cry with happiness. We would plan our future. A bright future, one we had never dared to imagine before. When the car arrived, I got in with Leo in my arms, my heart filled with hope. I couldn't stop smiling in the car. I kept kissing Leo's cheek. "Mommy loves you, Leo. Mommy loves Daddy. We're going to be the happiest family in the world." The drive to Rick's office in the Loop felt like the longest of my life. It usually took only half an hour, but today, every moment was filled with anticipation. I hugged Leo tightly in my lap. The sky outside the car window seemed bluer, and the sun shone brighter. Or maybe it was just my mood. The mood of a woman who had just discovered her destiny had taken a 180-degree turn. I imagined Rick. Maybe he was sitting in front of his computer with a frown, dealing with difficult numbers or clients. Soon, all that burden would be lifted from his shoulders. I would lift it. The Uber pulled up in front of the towering office building. The Chicago sky was reflected in its glass windows. This was Rick's world, a world a bit foreign to me. I had rarely come here. Rick always said there was no need for me to come, that he was busy and the office was no place for a child to play. But today was an exception. I paid the driver and took Leo's hand. We entered the cold, luxurious lobby. The floor was gleaming marble that reflected our figures. The receptionist, impeccably dressed and made up, looked us over. I could feel her eyes scanning my modest clothes, my decent skirt, and Leo, who was looking around with wide eyes. There was a faint hint of a sneer in her eyes. Or maybe I was being too sensitive. "Good morning. How can I help you?" she asked, trying to sound polite, but her tone was flat. "Hi, I'm here to see Rick Sullivan. He's my husband," I said, smiling. The receptionist checked her computer. "Rick Sullivan, do you have an appointment?" "Oh, no, I'm his wife. I'm here to surprise him." I whispered the surprise part a little. The receptionist raised an eyebrow slightly. "All right. Mr. Sullivan is in his office on the 15th floor. The elevators are over there." She seemed uninterested. I thanked her and hurried Leo towards the elevator. Inside that rising metal box, my heart beat even faster. Leo started to whine a little. "Daddy's taking a long time," he lamented. "Be patient, sweetie. We'll see him soon," I comforted him. The elevator doors opened on the 15th floor. The hallway was quiet. The thick carpet absorbed the sound of our footsteps. I knew Rick's office was at the end of the hall. I had been here once, a year ago, during a company family event. I walked slowly, hushing Leo, who wanted to run. The closer I got to Rick's office, the more clearly I could hear sounds filtering through the tiny gap of his office's solid wood and frosted glass door. It was a minuscule crack, but enough for the sounds from inside to escape. I heard Rick's voice. He was laughing, a deep, hearty laugh, but it was different. It was an unfamiliar laugh, filled with cold victory. "Exactly, Chairman Vance," Rick said. "I told you, the plan is moving smoothly." I stopped. Chairman Vance? As far as I knew, Rick's father had passed away like mine. Maybe it was a title for his boss. I brought a finger to my lips, signaling Leo to be quiet, and pressed my ear a little closer to the door. Another deeper, older voice replied, "Good." So that lawyer finally contacted her. "That's right," Rick exclaimed, still with that frighteningly cheerful voice. "That stupid lawyer called Catherine this morning. Just as you predicted, Chairman. By now, she must be on her way to the bank or crying happily like an idiot at home." My heart seized. Catherine. He called me by my name. Stupid lawyer. He was talking about Mr. Pierce. $100 million. A fantastic sum. Truly, Rick, you've performed very well. Marrying her, pretending to live in hardship. A magnificent performance, the older man's voice said with a small chuckle. I clapped my hand over my mouth. A sudden wave of nausea rose in my throat. My body began to tremble. "Of course, Chairman Vance," Rick preened. "It's all thanks to your guidance. I've been monitoring that fund for a long time, waited for it to mature. Catherine has no idea. She's too naive, too in love." He laughed again. The same laugh I heard when he proposed, the same laugh I heard when Leo was born, but now it sounded like the cackle of a demon. "And what's the next step in the plan? She signs the power of attorney?" Chairman Vance asked. There was a pause, and then Rick replied in a colder, crueler voice, several shades lower, a voice I had never heard in my life. "Of course, I take it all. I'll transfer the entire amount to an offshore account. After that, Catherine and the kid won't see a single dollar. Why would they? They're just a burden. I'll divorce her and throw them out of the house, leaving them back on the street." "The kid, you say?" Chairman Vance responded. "Leo," Rick answered dryly. "He's not my son. He's biologically mine, but I never wanted him. He was just a tool to tie Catherine to me." My body froze. A violent tremor ran through me from head to toe. My knees gave out, and I would have fallen if I hadn't leaned against the wall. Leo felt my trembling and looked at me worriedly. "Mommy, I'm cold." I couldn't answer. I couldn't breathe. The voices inside the room continued, but I no longer heard them. All I heard was the painful thudding of my own heart in my ears, and Rick's voice repeating, "Throw them out. Burden." On the street. The world I had built on love and trust shattered in an instant. The man I loved, the father of my child, the man I thought I would live happily with for the rest of my life, was a monster. He knew about this inheritance. He had planned for it. Our marriage was part of the plan. I was just a pawn in his game. The pain in my chest was too intense. It hurt more than the loss of my parents. It was the pain of betrayal, the betrayal of the one man in this world I trusted. I don't know how long I stood there frozen, but I knew I couldn't faint. I couldn't be weak. Not here, not now. Mustering the last of my strength, I slowly backed away. 1 step, 2 steps. I mustn't make a sound. Leo looked at me, confused, but thankfully, sensing the terror that engulfed his mother, he stayed quiet. I turned, grabbed Leo tightly, and walked quickly toward the elevator. I didn't run. I walked with what little dignity I had left, though inside I was in pieces. I'm sure the receptionist saw me pass through the lobby, my face pale, but I didn't care. I walked out of that building back onto the warm Chicago streets, but I felt cold, an overwhelming cold. I called another Uber to go home. I didn't cry the whole way, just stared blankly at the streets. Leo fell asleep on my lap, oblivious to the fact that our little world had just exploded. A surprise. Yes, I wanted to give Rick a surprise, but I was the one who received it. Even when the car stopped in front of our rented apartment, I still didn't cry. Something else was replacing the pain, something cold, hard, and sharp. It was rage. And behind the rage, a resolution began to form. I would indeed give him a surprise. I would pretend I heard nothing. I would play my part just as he had played his. If he had planned for me, I would plan something big for him. I would get my revenge. I would do something that would make him regret it for the rest of his life. He had taken my world from me. I would take his from him. I closed the door of our rented apartment silently. The click sounded too loud in my ringing ears. Leo was sleeping soundly on my shoulder. His steady breath felt warm on my neck. I carried him to our small bedroom and laid him down on the thin mattress. I tucked him in and kissed his forehead. For a moment, I stood there, looking at my son's innocent face. He was the only thing left unbroken in my world. He was the only reason I didn't fall apart in that office lobby earlier. Leo was innocent. Leo knew nothing. And that man whose voice I had just heard, that man who could call his own son a tool and a burden, did not deserve to be his father. I left the room and closed the door quietly. This home, which was once my castle, now felt like a prison. Every corner was a reminder of a lie. Our wedding photo hung on the wall. I looked at Rick's face in that picture. He was smiling so sincerely, holding me tightly. I remember feeling like the luckiest woman in the world that day. It turned out I was the biggest fool. I went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the old mirror, its edge slightly rusted. My face was pale, my eyes swollen, but dry. There were no tears left. What I saw in those eyes was something new, something cold. The woman staring back at me in the mirror was not the Catherine Miller I knew. This woman was a woman in ruins. And upon those ruins, something else was being built. Rage was the foundation. I washed my face. The cold water seemed to sober me up. I combed my messy hair. I had to look normal. I couldn't look broken. From that moment on, I was an actress, the best actress in this world, because if I failed, my son and I would end up on the street, just as Rick had planned. I looked at the clock. I had a few hours before Rick returned. I had to prepare dinner. The routine couldn't change. I went to the kitchen, the same kitchen where Mr. Pierce had called me that morning. It felt like 1,000 years ago. I took out vegetables and chicken from the fridge. I started chopping onions. My hands moved mechanically. The knife cut through the onions with a sharp precision. I imagined Rick's face. Every slice was a fragment of my rage. Every slice was my promise. He thought I was stupid. He thought I was weak. He thought I was a naive housewife who knew nothing but cooking and caring for a child. He was dead wrong. He underestimated the power of a mother when her child is threatened. I cooked his favorite dish, a pot roast. The smell of food filled the room, a smell that usually made me feel at home. Today, it turned my stomach, but I kept cooking. I would serve him my finest poison tonight. It would be my smile. Time passed in a suffocating silence. Leo was still sleeping soundly. I sat at the dining table, waiting for my executioner, the man I loved and hated at the same time, to return. At 8 o'clock, I heard the sound of his car pulling into the driveway. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I took a deep breath. Calm down, Catherine. Calm down for Leo. The door opened. I'm home. The voice, the same voice I heard behind the door, the voice full of victorious laughter, the voice that planned my ruin. I forced a smile. Welcome home, honey. What made you late? I walked toward him as usual and took his briefcase. He gave me a kiss on the forehead, a kiss as cold as ice. Sorry, babe. Had a last-minute meeting with the chairman. I'm so tired, he complained. Chairman Arthur Vance, my poor husband. I feigned sympathy. Look, I have dinner ready for you, honey. Go take a shower first so you can freshen up. My wife takes the best care of me. He ruffled my hair and headed to the bathroom. While he showered, I set the table. My hands trembled slightly as I placed the plate in front of him. I had to control myself. Rick came out, refreshed and changed. He sat at the table. Wow, pot roast. How did you know I was craving this? He said, smiling. The smile was fake as mine. We started to eat. The silence was only broken by the sound of cutlery. I couldn't swallow the food. It felt like a stone in my throat, but I forced myself. Honey, what's wrong? You're quiet, he asked, looking at me. It was time. I raised my head, looked into his eyes, the eyes that had always made me feel safe. I began. My performance. Honey, my voice trembled. I let the tears I had been holding back earlier well up now. Rick was immediately alert. What's wrong, Catherine? Are you sick? I shook my head and smiled. the happiest smile I could fake. "I don't know where to start, honey. It's such big news." "What news?" he asked, forcing a curious tone. "A great actor." I held my breath as if I was too overwhelmed to speak. "This morning, I received a call from a lawyer. My late parents' lawyer." Rick put down his fork, leaned forward. His eyes gleamed, a glint of greed he couldn't completely hide. "A lawyer? What happened?" I let a single tear fall. "Honey, it turns out my parents left me an inheritance, a fund that can only be released now." "An inheritance?" Rick feigned surprise. "How much? $10,000? $20,000? I looked at him squarely. "Can't $1,000,000. There was silence. Rick froze. His performance of surprise was almost perfect. His eyes widened, and his mouth fell slightly open. He was a talented actor. "What did you say?" he whispered. 100. "Are you kidding me, Catherine?" "It's not a joke, honey. $100 million. I covered my face with my hands, pretending to sob with emotion. "Our lives are going to change, honey. Our lives." After a moment, Rick jumped up, ran to me, lifted me up, and hugged me tightly, so tight I could barely breathe. "Oh my God, babe, this is incredible," he shouted. He spun me around in the air. "I can't believe it. We're rich, Catherine. We're rich." I returned his embrace. I rested my head on his broad chest. I could hear his heart beating fast, not from love, but from the adrenaline of greed. I closed my eyes, holding back immense disgust. This hug was cold and deadly, like a snake's. "This is our luck, babe." "Leo's luck," he said again, kissing the top of my head. "Our luck." Yes, he had planned this luck for a long time. He let me go and held me by both shoulders. His eyes were teary. He could even conjure fake tears. "We can buy our house. Babe, a mansion. We don't have to live in this small rental anymore. And Leo, we can send him to the best school abroad." I nodded, still pretending to sob with happiness. He sat me back down in my chair. He sat beside me and held my hand tightly. "But such a large sum of money has to be handled carefully, Catherine. There are a lot of bad people in the world. You don't know about investments or law, do you?" There was the hook. "No, I really don't, honey. I'm scared," I said in a small voice, pretending to be the weak woman. "Don't be scared." He stroked the back of my hand. "I'm here. I'll help you manage everything. I'll take care of it. You just have to sit back and relax. Do you trust me, honey?" I looked into his eyes. The liar's eyes, the traitor's eyes. "Of course I do, honey," I replied with the sweetest smile I could give. "I trust you completely. You're my husband. Who else am I going to trust in the world?" He smiled, satisfied. A smile of victory. He thought he had won. He didn't know the war had just begun. That night was the longest of my life. I slept next to Rick, but my back was turned to him. He slept soundly, snoring softly, the sleep of a victor who feels his plan is moving smoothly. I, on the other hand, couldn't sleep a wink. My thoughts were racing. I strategized every step, every possibility. The first thing I had to do was secure my position. I couldn't fight two cunning men like Rick and Chairman Vance alone. I needed allies, and I knew who to contact. Early the next morning, Rick woke up cheerful. He was whistling as he showered. He hugged me twice before leaving for work, something he hadn't done in a long time. "I'm going to research how to manage such a large sum of money, babe. I'll set up an appointment with a trusted notary later," he said before leaving. I just smiled and nodded. "Have a good day, honey." As soon as the sound of his car faded into the distance, the smile on my face vanished instantly. I locked the door. I comforted Leo, who had just woken up, and fed him. After making sure Leo was focused on playing with his toys, I picked up my phone. I contacted Mr. Pierce. "Hello, Catherine Miller. I was waiting for your call." His voice was still calm and professional. "Mr. Pierce," I said in a low, urgent voice, "we need to meet immediately, but not at your office. This is very important and very confidential." There was a pause. "All right, ma'am, I understand. How about we meet at a small coffee shop in the West Loop? I'll send you the address, 1 hour from now." "I'm on my way." I got ready in a hurry. I left Leo with Mrs. Gable, my next-door neighbor, with the excuse that I had to go run an urgent errand at City Hall. I called an Uber instead of a cab. I had to move quickly and discreetly. I arrived at the small, crowded coffee shop. It was a perfect place. No one would pay attention to us in the morning rush. Mr. Pierce was already sitting in a corner, a cup of black coffee in front of him. He was a middle-aged man, well-dressed, with thick-rimmed glasses and an intelligent look. I sat across from him, my heart pounding. "Catherine Miller," he greeted with a nod. "Mr. Pierce," I wasted no time. "I don't know who to trust anymore, but my gut tells me I can trust you." "What's the matter, ma'am? Is it about the inheritance?" "Yes, but not just that." I took a deep breath. "Mr. Pierce, I have to tell you something. Something I heard yesterday. Something horrible." And I told him everything. My trip to Rick's office, the voices behind the door, the name Arthur Vance, the plan to take all my money and abandon Leo and me. As I spoke, Mr. Eza spoke, to Eza spoke. Pierce's face went from calm to surprised, and finally to grim. His jaw tensed. When I finished, he was silent for a long time. He stared at his coffee cup. "Arthur Vance," he whispered. "I should have known." "You know him?" I asked. Mr. Pierce raised his head. His eyes looked at me intently. "More than know him, Catherine Miller. I know of him. He was your late mother's biggest business rival. He was the man who indirectly drove your mother's company into ruin decades ago. Your mother could never prove it, but she knew he had done something dirty." My body went cold. So this wasn't just about money. This was a long-planned revenge. Rick wasn't just a pawn. He was a soldier sent by Arthur Vance. "Ma'am," Mr. Pierce continued, his voice now filled with resolution, "your mother was a good friend of mine. She entrusted me with all of this. She asked me to protect you when the time came. I made an oath at her grave. I will fulfill it. And now I know what we have to do." "What is it, Mr. Pierce?" "First, we have to protect your assets. Rick will soon ask you to sign a power of attorney. Do not sign anything under any circumstances." "But what excuse can I give?" "Tell him you want to review it calmly. Tell him you want to meet with your family lawyer, which is me. I'll handle that. I'll pretend to be an old, strict, and very bureaucratic lawyer. We'll buy time. And while we buy time, we have to move. We have to be smarter than them." Mr. Pierce leaned in. "Catherine Miller, I can freeze the disbursement of that fund temporarily for security reasons, but that will raise Rick's suspicion. The other option is for you to receive a small portion of that fund right now, without Rick knowing." "Receive it for what?" "For your war chest, ma'am," Mr. Pierce said. "You can't fight them with empty hands. You need resources. You need to know what they're doing, where they hide their money, what their next plan is." "Spies?" I whispered. "Private investigators," Mr. Pierce corrected. "I know someone reliable. He's the best in the business. He can tail Rick and Chairman Vance, track their bank accounts, their assets, and even find evidence of their other crimes." My thoughts immediately went to the conversation in Rick's office. Their laughter, the disgust washed over me again. "Do it, Mr. Pierce," I said firmly. My voice no longer trembled. "How much do you need?" "It's not cheap, but it's worth it. We'll release $400,000 first. It will be put into a new account in your name that only you and I will know about." $400,000, an unimaginable sum before. Now it was just seed money. "I agree," I said. "And Mr. Pierce, I want more than just to know their plan. I want proof." "Proof of what?" "Not to divorce him." I looked at Mr. Pierce. "Proof to ruin them, just as they plan to ruin me." Mr. Pierce looked at me for a long time. He seemed to see something new in my face. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well, Catherine Miller. We will design this grand plan. We will give them a surprise they will never forget." I left that coffee shop with a different feeling. My fear was gone, replaced by a clear objective. I was no longer the weak Catherine Miller. I was a warrior. Days later, Mr. Pierce informed me that my secret account was active with our operational fund. He also set up a meeting with a private investigator named Jack Riley. I met Jack in the lobby of a discreet hotel in downtown Chicago. He was a simple man who didn't draw attention, but his eyes were sharp. "Catherine Miller?" he asked. I nodded. "We don't have much time," I said. "This is a photo." I gave him a photo of Rick and an old business news clipping of Chairman Vance that Mr. Pierce had given me. "I want to know everything," I said. "Where he goes, who he sees, where he hides his money, especially Chairman Vance's. I want to know all his connections." Jack nodded. "Understood. I'll send you a daily report." "Good. Don't get caught." I returned home before Rick came back. I cooked again, smiled again, and played the part of the dumb, naive wife again. Rick became sweeter with each passing day. He often brought me flowers and chocolates. He thought he was reeling in a fish. He didn't know he was dealing with a shark. A week passed, and just as Rick started to ask nervously about when we would sign the power of attorney, Jack's first report arrived in my secret email. The report was short, with a single photo and a few lines of text. The photo showed Rick and Chairman Vance shaking hands in front of the site of a new, luxurious construction project. Both were smiling broadly. Below the photo, Jack's note: "Target Rick Sullivan has just been promoted to project director. This project is funded by Arthur Vance. A suspicious flow of funds has been detected from the project's account to private offshore accounts in Rick's and Arthur Vance's names. Strong indications of money laundering." I stared at the photo. Money laundering. So they weren't just scammers, they were criminals. The game was much bigger and dirtier than I had imagined, and I had just found my first weapon. The next few weeks were the most grueling game of chess. On one hand, Rick transformed into the world's most perfect husband. He came home early, brought me my favorite cake, or a new toy for Leo. At night, he would massage my feet and whisper to me about our brilliant future. He talked about luxury cars, a big house with a pool we would buy for ourselves, and vacations around the world. He painted a heaven, but I knew he was leading me to hell. Every touch of his felt cold, and every sweet word sounded like the hiss of a snake in my ears. I smiled, nodded, and pretended to be seduced, but inside, I counted every one of his lies. On the other hand, he started to get impatient. He would ask, feigning casualty, "So, babe, when can we see that lawyer Pierce? Let's get this over with quickly." I always had an answer. "Patience, honey. Mr. Pierce says there's a lot of paperwork, that he has to settle the estate tax and it's complicated." Or, "Mr. Pierce is on a business trip for another client, honey. He said the asset is secure, so let's just wait." Every time I delayed, I could see a flash of irritation pass quickly through his eyes before he covered it with a fake smile again. "Oh, sure. We'll wait then. But the sooner, the better, honey. So we can move out of this small house." He thought I was stupid. He thought I didn't see his act. Meanwhile, Mr. Pierce, Jack, and I worked in silence. Jack's reports kept coming to my secret email. Photos of Rick meeting with Chairman Vance in luxury hotel lobbies, records of intercepted phone calls, discussing projects and new funds. They were planning something big, obviously using the construction project as a cover. Jack's reports confirmed what I already suspected. The project was short on funds due to their mismanagement and corruption. They desperately needed an injection of fresh cash. They needed my inheritance. Now I understood Rick's promotion to project director was not a gift. It was a way for Arthur Vance to place him in the perfect position to siphon his dirty money. And now, mine. The pressure grew. I knew I couldn't delay forever. Rick was getting nervous. "I don't like your lawyer, Catherine. Why is he so slow? Isn't he making things difficult on purpose?" He accused me one night. It was time. I knew I had to give him something. A bait. That night, after Leo was asleep, I sat next to Rick in our small living room. I put on the most worried expression I could. "Honey," I began in a trembling voice. Rick was immediately alert. He turned off the TV. "What is it, babe?" "It's Mr. Pierce." I lowered my head and fiddled with the hem of my dress. "I feel bad for you, honey. You're working so hard, and you have such big plans for us. And I'm holding back the money because of this slow Mr. Pierce." Rick's face immediately softened. He thought I felt guilty. "Hey, it's okay, babe. I understand." "No, honey," I interrupted him. "I'm your wife. I have to support you," I told Mr. Pierce. I told him we needed a small portion of the money now for our operational expenses. Rick's eyes lit up. "Oh yeah? You can get a part?" I nodded. Mr. Pierce said it was possible as an emergency fund. It's not much, but I looked at him as if I were giving him the world. "I think I can get $800,000 released." Rick almost choked. $800,000? Yes. I feigned embarrassment. "I know it's nothing compared to the total, but I thought you could use it first for whatever you need, or as seed money for our investment. You know more about managing money. I trust you completely, honey." This was my biggest gamble. I threw him an immensely large bait. If he refused it, my plan would fail. But I knew my husband. I knew his greed. Rick couldn't hide his joy. His face lit up. He immediately hugged me tightly. "Oh my God, babe, you're the best wife ever. Of course, that will help us a lot. This will make our plans move very fast." "Do you want me to transfer it to your account?" I asked naively. Yes, of course. Do it tomorrow. Just transfer it to my regular salary account." He kissed my forehead several times. "I promise you, babe, this money will multiply many times over. I'll make you and Leo live like a queen and a prince." "I trust you, honey," I whispered, holding back the nausea in my stomach. The next day, I went to the bank. Not alone, of course. Mr. Pierce had arranged everything. I was accompanied by his assistant, disguised as my cousin. The procedure went smoothly. $800,000 was moved from my inheritance account to Rick's personal account. That night, Rick was the happiest man in the world. He took Leo and me to dinner at an expensive restaurant, one we had only looked at from the outside before. He ordered all the most expensive food. "This is just the beginning, babe," he said, raising his glass of juice. "The beginning of our new life." I smiled and raised my glass. "To our new life," I said. What Rick didn't know was that Mr. Pierce and Jack were on standby. His account was under 24/7 surveillance. We didn't have to wait long. Exactly 2 days after the money was deposited, Jack sent an urgent report. The $800,000 didn't stay long in Rick's account. He didn't use it as a down payment for a house or a car. No. Rick transferred almost the entire amount, split into 3 parts. Jack's report was very clear. The funds flowed to several fake supplier accounts related to Chairman Vance's construction project, and the most crucial small part was transferred directly to Chairman Vance's personal offshore account. The same account Jack had discovered earlier. Rick wasn't investing. He wasn't building our future. He was using my mother's inheritance to plug his criminal holes. He was using me to fund his money laundering. I closed my laptop. My hands were no longer shaking. There was only cold fury. The bait had been taken. The greedy fish had fallen into the trap. Now it was time to pull the line tight. Once the $800,000 bait was fully swallowed, Rick became more relaxed. He thought he was in control. He thought he had me completely in his hands, the stupid wife who had handed over the money so easily. He no longer actively asked about the rest of the inheritance. He was busy. I knew he was busy. Jack's reports showed an increase in his activity. He met with Chairman Vance often, not in hidden places, but at their project site. They clearly felt they had the upper hand. I gave them a week for them to get comfortable, for the dirty money to settle, for them to let their guard down. During that week, I was the perfect wife. I cooked, smiled, and served Rick like a king. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, my team worked. Mr. Pierce prepared the legal documentation. Jack gathered more evidence, and I prepared for the final battle. On the 7th day, Rick came home with great news. "Babe, I have good news," he shouted before he even took off his shoes. His face was beaming. "Chairman Vance wants to meet you." My heart skipped a beat. "He wants to meet me?" "Why?" I asked, feigning surprise. "He said he heard about our investment plans and is impressed by you, and your generosity. He wants to offer us a golden opportunity, a chance to multiply the rest of your inheritance in no time." I feigned awe. "Really, honey?" "Yes. I told you the $800,000 was just the beginning." Rick grabbed me by the shoulders. "We have a meeting tomorrow in his office. Catherine, tomorrow is our big day. After tomorrow, we'll be officially rich." "But what do I have to wear? What am I supposed to say?" I asked, playing the part of the nervous country mouse wife. You don't have to bring anything. Just bring yourself. And maybe just the inheritance paperwork to show him. I'll do all the talking. You just sit quietly beside me, okay? I nodded obediently. Okay, honey. I barely slept that night. I contacted Mr. Pierce and Jack. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Chairman Vance's office. It's time. The next morning I did my makeup. I chose a dark blue suit that gave a serious but elegant impression. A white blouse with a cream blazer, and my hair perfectly coiffed. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked calm. Her eyes were sharp. There was no fear left. "Mommy, so pretty," Leo complimented me. I smiled and gave him a kiss. "Pray for Mommy, sweetie." Rick was waiting for me. He was impeccable in his new, expensive suit. He looked like a successful executive. He didn't know he was heading to his own ruin. We arrived at Chairman Vance's building. It was different from Rick's, much more luxurious. It stood tall in the heart of the business district. We took a private elevator directly to the top floor where Chairman Vance's office was. The office was immense. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a panoramic view of Chicago. Chairman Vance was sitting behind a giant wooden desk, looking like a king on his throne. He was older than Rick, imposing, with sharp, cold eyes. "Ah, Rick. And I presume this is Catherine Miller," he greeted. His voice was deep. He didn't stand up. "Have a seat." I sat on a plush leather sofa. Rick sat beside me, nervous but full of hope. So, Catherine Miller, Chairman Vance, went straight to the point. "I've heard about your recent windfall, and your husband, Rick, is a smart man. He has invested a small portion of it very well through us." He smiled slyly. "That $800,000 has already grown immensely this week. Imagine what we can do with the remaining $99,200,000. Rick gave me a slight nudge. I looked at Chairman Vance. "What opportunity are you offering me, Chairman?" "Simple," he said. "You entrust the rest of your funds to us. We will invest it in our real estate project, which is extremely profitable. I guarantee that in 6 months, your money will double. Of course, you will have to sign a full power of attorney to Rick so he can manage it on your behalf." At that moment, a man who looked like a notary, who had been standing quietly in the corner, came forward. He placed a thick folder of documents on the coffee table in front of us. At the top, it clearly stated, "Full power of attorney." "You just have to sign here, ma'am," the notary said, offering me a pen. Rick smiled broadly and looked at me. His eyes were burning. "Sign it, babe, this is our dream." I took the pen. My hand was steady. I looked at Rick, I looked at Chairman Vance, I looked at their fake notary, and then I put the pen back down on the table. "I'm sorry," I said softly. Rick's smile froze. "What's wrong, babe? Is there a problem?" "I can't sign this," I said. Chairman Vance frowned. "What do you mean?" I took a deep breath. "I can't sign this power of attorney because I believe there are other, more urgent documents that need my signature." Rick looked confused. "What other documents, Catherine? Don't joke around." "Oh, I'm not joking, Rick." My voice changed. It was no longer the weak or scared tone. It was just a cold, flat tone. At that moment, the door to Chairman Vance's office opened. Rick and Chairman Vance turned in surprise. In walked Mr. Pierce. He wasn't alone. Behind him were Jack and 2 men in neat suits carrying briefcases. "Who are you?" "Call security," Chairman Vance shouted, jumping to his feet. "They're my guests," I said. I stood up too. "Rick, Chairman Vance. This is Mr. Franklin Pierce, my lawyer. This is Jack Riley, my private investigator. And these two," I pointed to the men in suits, "are independent auditors." Rick's face turned white. He looked at me as if he were seeing a ghost. "Catherine, what does this mean?" "What does it mean, honey?" I took a folder out of my bag, a file Rick thought contained the inheritance documentation. I threw it on the table on top of his power of attorney. "It means I know everything," I said. "I knew about your plan from the beginning. I knew Chairman Vance was my mother's old nemesis. I knew Rick married me for this money." "You," Rick stammered. "And I know," I continued, my voice echoing in the suddenly silent room, "that the $800,000 I transferred last week was not invested. You used it to cover up traces of money laundering in your construction project, and you were stupid enough to transfer a portion directly to Chairman Vance's personal Cayman Islands account. Chairman Vance's eyes widened in horror. These auditors, I pointed, already have complete proof of that fund flow. And Jack has recorded every conversation between you two for the past month, including the phone call in Rick's office, where he said he would throw Leo and me out on the street. Rick fell back onto the sofa. He was speechless. All the blood seemed to drain from his face. So, I said, looking directly into Rick's eyes, I'm not going to sign that power of attorney, but it seems to me that you two are about to sign an arrest warrant. Mr. Pierce stepped forward. Chairman Vance, Rick Sullivan. We have enough evidence to charge you with fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. Your choice is to face all charges or cooperate right now. Chairman Vance looked at me with hatred in his eyes. Rick looked at me with terror in his eyes. He finally realized he wasn't facing the dumb wife. He was facing a woman who had taken everything back. You, Rick whispered. You set me up. I smiled. The first genuine smile I had given today. I didn't set you up, honey. I just gave you enough rope to hang yourself. The room, which moments before had felt so expansive, suddenly felt suffocating. It was as if the air had been sucked out. Chairman Vance, who seconds ago looked like a king on his throne, now stood with a red face, rage and shock battling in his eyes. Rick, on the other hand, looked like a dead man walking. He remained on the sofa, pale, staring at me with empty eyes, unable to believe what he had just heard. The fake notary's smile in the corner had long vanished, replaced by cold sweat on his temples. What the hell is this? Chairman Vance was the first to find his voice. It was a roar. Who are you people? How dare you barge into my office without my permission? Security, call security. There's no need to shout, Chairman Vance, Mr. Pierce said calmly. He stepped forward and placed his own briefcase on the coffee table, right next to the now ridiculous power of attorney folder. We were invited by your client's wife, he said, gesturing to Rick, by Miss Catherine Miller. I don't care, Chairman Vance yelled. You're trespassing, and this detective's recordings are illegal. You've invaded my privacy. I can sue all of you. Go ahead, Jack, who had been quiet, spoke now. His voice was flat. All my evidence was obtained legally. The fund flow tracing is public data for certified auditors. And the conversation recording was obtained from Rick himself. Rick's head shot up. What? I never. Jack smiled slightly. You gave it to me. When you foolishly used the new phone Chairman Vance gave you, not knowing I had installed tracking software. It includes all your chat backups and voice recordings. You didn't even bother to change the default password. Chairman Vance glared at Rick with murderous eyes. You idiot. You fool. No, I said. They both turned to me. He's not a fool. He's just greedy and overconfident. Like you, Chairman Vance. Rick finally got to his feet. He stumbled towards me. There was a pleading expression on his face. It was another role he was playing. The victim, Catherine, honey, you're misunderstanding. His voice was hoarse. I can explain all of this. It's not what you think. Chairman Vance. He forced me. He set me up, honey. He tried to grab my hand. I pulled my hand back. Stop it, Rick, I said coldly. Your performance is over. No, honey, it's not a performance. I love you. I love Leo. Everything I did was for us, for our future. Tears started to well up in his eyes. Magnificent actor. For us? I asked. My voice was sharp as ice. When you stood behind your office door and told Chairman Vance you would throw Leo and me onto the street after you got the money, was that for us? Rick's face crumbled. That sentence was the final nail in his coffin. He knew that I had heard everything. When you said your own son was a burden and a tool, was that said with him in mind as your son? No, Catherine. It was Chairman Vance who poisoned my mind. I love Leo. I love you. He knelt, grabbing the hem of my skirt. His grip felt like a stain. Let go of me, I said dryly. No, not until you forgive me. Please, Catherine, give me one more chance. I promise I'll change. I'll be a good husband. We can start over. We have $100 million. We can go far away. Just the three of us. Please, honey, I'm begging you." He was crying like a child, a grown man kneeling and pleading before the woman he had utterly betrayed. I looked past him to Mr. Pierce and Jack. "Do you know the difference between you and me, Rick?" My voice carried clearly in the silent room. "You're not crying because you betrayed me." He looked up, his wet eyes staring at me in confusion. "You're crying," I continued, "because you got caught. Your regret is fake as your love, as fake as our marriage. You don't regret your actions. You only regret that your plan failed." I pulled hard, yanking my skirt from his grasp, causing him to fall backward. "As for Leo," I said, "he will grow up without a father. And that is far better than growing up with a con man, a thief, and a cowardly traitor like you." That was my last word to him. I turned and said to Mr. Pierce, "Take him away. Take them both away." The police officers who had entered with them nodded. They and their colleague lifted Rick up. Rick no longer resisted. He was limp, like a puppet whose strings had been cut, and Chairman Vance, too. Chairman Vance, who had been watching Rick's downfall, now seemed resigned. He knew his game was over. The officers escorted the two men out of the room. Mr. Pierce, Jack, and the audit team gathered their things, handing over the initial evidence to the investigative team. I walked out of the room first. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see Rick's face or Chairman Vance's face ever again. I walked down the silent top-floor hallway to the private elevator. Mr. Pierce followed me. "Catherine Miller," he said softly, "are you all right?" I stepped into the elevator. "I'm fine, Mr. Pierce." The elevator doors closed. We descended in silence. When the elevator doors opened in the main lobby, we were greeted by a scene of chaos. Rick and Chairman Vance were being escorted through the crowded lobby. Every employee, every guest had stopped what they were doing. They were staring. And that's where the final drama unfolded. Chairman Vance, perhaps out of shame and rage, suddenly stopped and turned to Rick, who was following him. "This is all your fault," Chairman Vance shouted, his voice echoing in the lobby. "You incompetent fool! If you had handled your stupid wife properly, we wouldn't be in this mess." Rick, who was already broken, snapped. "My fault? You set me up. You said it would be easy. You're the greedy one, you old bully, you cowardly scammer." The two men, former mentor and protege, former criminal partners, began to scream and blame each other in the middle of the lobby. They nearly came to blows before the embarrassed police officers pulled them apart. It was a humiliating spectacle, the downfall of two powerful men in the most despicable way. I watched it all from the elevator door. Everyone in the lobby was looking at them, but no one paid any attention to me. While all the attention was focused on that shameful fight, I, Catherine Miller, the modest woman they thought was naive and foolish, walked away. I walked through the large glass doors of the building. I stepped out of their shadows. The warm, dusty Chicago air hit my face, but to me, it was the freshest air I had ever breathed. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment. I looked up at the sky and took out my phone. I didn't call Mr. Pierce or Jack. I called my neighbor. "Hello, Mrs. Gable, it's Catherine. My errand is done. I'm on my way home. Thank you so much for watching Leo." I hung up, called an Uber, and waited on the curb. I was going home. To my son. To my new life. The war was over, and I had won. The days following the arrest of Rick and Chairman Vance were a quiet storm. The news broke in all the business media. Vance project scandal, $100 million investment fraud, junior manager duped his wife. Rick's and Chairman Vance's faces were everywhere, not as successful executives, but as handcuffed defendants. Fortunately, Leo and I were safe from the spotlight. Mr. Pierce quickly moved us to a secure serviced apartment, away from the hounding journalists, away from our old rental apartment, which felt like a snakeskin I had shed. The legal process began, and it was messy. I had to face it with my head held high. The first thing I did was file for divorce. I didn't want to be tied to Rick's name for another second. To my surprise, Rick tried to resist from behind bars. He hired a cheap lawyer from his remaining family to buy time, claiming he was a victim, that I had set him up. He even had the audacity to claim a part of my inheritance as a marital asset. In family court, his lawyer argued that Rick had been a good husband and deserved a share of the assets acquired during the marriage. I just sat silently, and Mr. Pierce stepped forward. Mr. Pierce, I'm an ace. Pierce didn't say much. He just played one piece of evidence, an audio recording. My voice and Rick's when I told him about the inheritance, followed by Rick's voice recorded from behind his office door, laughing with Chairman Vance and calling me stupid, when he said he would throw Leo and me out on the street. The judge listened in the closed courtroom. The judge's face hardened. Rick's lawyer couldn't say another word. My divorce was granted that same day. Full custody of Leo went entirely to me. The court also issued a permanent restraining order. Rick was forbidden from ever approaching or contacting me or Leo again. Rick's name was legally removed from Leo's birth certificate as a guardian. Legally, he was nothing to us anymore. The criminal case proceeded in parallel. It was a much bigger trial. Chairman Vance brought in an army of expensive lawyers, trying to twist the facts to push all the blame onto Rick. Rick, in contrast, looked miserable. He tried to play the victim card, claiming he was under pressure and threat from Chairman Vance. But the evidence doesn't lie. The forensic audit team I hired laid it all bare. The fund flow of the $800,000 was the smoking gun. It was a hook set too deep. It clearly showed how the money went from my account to Rick's, was split into shell companies, and finally landed in Chairman Vance's personal offshore account. It was a perfect trail of money laundering conspiracy. My testimony was the climax. I took the witness stand, calm and steady. I told the whole story from Mr. Pierce's call, my happiness, to the moment I stood trembling outside Rick's office door. I told of all the lies Rick told me that night. All the fake hugs. All the sweet promises. I looked at Rick sitting at the defendant's table. He didn't dare to meet my eyes. He just stared at the floor. The prosecutor asked for the maximum penalty. Planned fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, money laundering. Their list of crimes was long. The judge's sentence was read. Chairman Vance, as the mastermind of it all, was sentenced to 20 years in prison and the forfeiture of all his remaining assets. His company went bankrupt, his name ruined. And Rick, my husband, ex-husband, was found guilty on all counts, including embezzlement from his former office that I had helped uncover. For his central role in the deception and facilitating the money laundering, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. 15 years. Leo would be 20 when his father was released. I left the courthouse that day feeling an immense relief, not for revenge, but for the peace of mind that justice had been served. A weight was lifted from my chest. Months passed, and Leo and I began to build our new life. With Mr. Pierce's help, I started to learn how to manage the inheritance wisely. I didn't buy mansions or sports cars. I bought a comfortable, secure condo in a good neighborhood. I enrolled Leo in the best kindergarten. For the first time in our lives, we could breathe. One day, I received a letter from Rick from prison. He wrote several pages filled with regret, apologies, and promises that he had changed. He said he read the Bible every day. He said he had realized his mistakes. He begged me to visit him just once. He said he just wanted to apologize in person. I crumpled the letter, but I opened it again. There was something unfinished. I decided to go. I went alone to that prison. I sat in the crowded, noisy visiting room, separated by thick glass and an intercom, and he walked in, wearing a grayish-blue prison jumpsuit. The man I saw was not the Rick I knew. He was thin. His hair was shaved, and his eyes were sunken. The handsome face that had fooled so many was now dull and filled with despair. He saw me, and tears instantly welled up in his eyes. He rushed to the intercom. "Catherine! Catherine! You came! Oh my God, you came!" His voice trembled. I picked up the intercom handset. I said nothing. "Honey." "No, Catherine. I'm so sorry," he sobbed. "Every night I pray. I regret it. I really do. I swear. I was blinded by Chairman Vance. Regret," I interrupted him. My voice was flat, emotionless. It sounded strange through the intercom. Yes, I regret it. I swear to God, Catherine, I'll do anything to make it up. Please forgive me." I stared at him. I pierced through whatever lies might be left. "I'm not here to hear your regret, Rick," I said softly. I'm here for one thing. He looked at me with hope-filled eyes. What? Tell me anything, Catherine. I want you to know, I said, Leo and I, we're doing well. We are so happy without you. His face hardened. I want you to know that, for the next 15 years, while you sit in this cell, you can think about the $100 million you will never touch. You can think about the life of comfort you will never live. And you can think about the son who will never call you dad. Catherine, please, don't be so cruel, he sobbed. I laughed, a dry, humorless laugh. You taught me the way. But don't worry, I won't take revenge your way. My best revenge is not this. I stood up. My best revenge is my life. The happy, successful life I built on the ruins of your lies. The life you will never see, never be a part of. Catherine, wait! Don't go! He shouted, panicking. He banged on the glass. How is Leo? Please, let me talk to him. Just once. He's my son. I paused at the exit, but I didn't look back. You're wrong, I said. He's not your son. He's my son. And he will grow up to be a much better man than you, because I will make sure he doesn't inherit a single drop of your poison. I put down the intercom handset. I walked out of that visiting room without looking back again. I could hear his shouts of frustration and regret behind me, but they faded as the metal door clanged shut behind me. That was the end. That chapter was closed. 2 years passed. 2 years is a short time, but it can be a very long time to rebuild a world. That morning, the sun was shining over Chicago. I, Catherine Miller, stood on a small stage. I was no longer wearing my modest house clothes. I wore neat, but still modest, business attire. A white blouse with a cream blazer and my hair perfectly coiffed. In front of me, dozens of guests, children, and journalists sat and listened. Behind me stood a new, 4-story building. It wasn't luxurious, but it was modern, clean, and colorful. The walls were painted in bright colors, and there was a large playground next to it. Above the main entrance, the name was inscribed, The Mothers of Hope Foundation. I took the microphone. My heart was beating a little, but not from fear. It was the beat of happiness. Good morning. My voice, which once only dared to whisper, was now clear and confident through the speaker. Welcome to the inauguration of the Mothers of Hope Foundation, built with dreams and prayers. I paused and looked at the crowd. My eyes landed on Leo, who was now 7 years old, sitting in the front row next to Mrs. Gable, my former neighbor, now my friend and helper with Leo's care. Leo waved at me with his small hand. I smiled back. 2 years ago, I continued, my life changed. I was entrusted with a mission, one so big that at first I thought it was a blessing, but it almost destroyed me. The journalists began to write faster. They knew who I was. They knew my story. I almost became a victim, I said, a victim of greed, betrayal, and lies. I almost ended up on the street with my son, but fate said otherwise. I was given the strength to fight back, and I won. $100 million. I said the number out loud. A fantastic number, a number that could buy mansions, luxury cars, and a life of waste. But what good would it be if it was just for me? I looked at the building behind me. So, I decided, this money, this inheritance, is not for me. It was a test, and I will use it for a greater purpose. The Mothers of Hope Foundation, I explained, is dedicated to single mothers, women, and orphans, victims of domestic violence, who felt alone and had nowhere to go, just like I once was. Here, we don't just offer shelter. We offer job training, legal aid, scholarships for their children, and most importantly, hope. A thunderous applause broke out. I saw Mr. Pierce standing at the side of the stage. He had a proud smile. He was no longer just my lawyer. He was my friend, my senior advisor, and now the chairman of the foundation's board. The best revenge, I said, is not to destroy our enemies. The best revenge is to build something much better than what they destroyed. The best revenge is happiness. The inauguration went smoothly. After my speech, I walked around, greeting the donors. I hugged the orphans who now lived in the foundation's new residence. I watched Leo running around the playground with other children, laughing heartily. He was growing up to be a bright, confident, and loving boy. There was no trace of trauma in his eyes. As the event was winding down, Mr. Pierce approached me, offering a glass of juice. "A wonderful speech, Catherine Miller. Are you officially a CEO now?" he joked. I smiled. "Thank you for everything, Mr. Pierce. I wouldn't be here without you." "Ah, by the way," Mr. Pierce said, his face a little serious, "I have some breaking news. I just received an email from the legal team." "About what?" "Chairman Vance. He passed away last night in prison. A heart attack." I was silent for a moment. I felt nothing, no satisfaction, no pity, just a void. He was just a part of the past now, a past I had firmly closed. "And Rick?" I asked. He tried to appeal again. It was denied. And of course, he sent his 20th letter this month, begging to see photos of Leo. He heard about this foundation through the news in prison. I looked at Leo on the swing. "Let him be, Mr. Pierce," I said calmly. "Let him see through the bars what I have built on the ruins he created. Let him see that the foolish, naive woman he underestimated is now giving hope to hundreds of other women. His life is over, Catherine. He will rot in there, forgotten by everyone, regretting all his decisions. He will regret it for the rest of his life, just as you wanted." I nodded. But strangely, it didn't feel important anymore. His regret was his problem. "Mommy!" Leo ran to me, hugging my legs tightly. His clothes were a little dirty from playing in the dirt. "Hello, my brave boy." I knelt and wiped his dirty cheek. "Did you have fun playing?" "Yes, I had so much fun, Mommy. I helped the big girls plant flowers." I hugged him tightly. This was my world. This was my revenge. Unbroken happiness. I took Leo's hand and stood up. I looked at the foundation building, standing firmly in the sunlight. I realized I hadn't just built a foundation. I had rebuilt my life. I had turned an inheritance full of tragedy into a legacy full of hope. Rick wanted to take $100 million from me and make me regret it. In the end, he lost everything. And I gained something far more valuable than money. I gained myself. And that was the most satisfying end to the story.